You're lying in bed, eyes closed, when suddenly geometric lines start forming in the darkness. Pulsating grids, intricate patterns that seem to watch you back. Your rational mind says it's just your imagination. But something deeper recognizes this isn't random. The ancient Egyptians called this the first veil, documented extensively in the pyramid texts, and later in the Corpus Hermeticum. Thoth himself described these nocturnal geometric visions as the initial awakening sign, marking what he termed the chosen ones, individuals whose consciousness was beginning to perceive reality's underlying structure. Here's what most people don't realize. Mystery schools across millennia considered this pattern recognition the most crucial spiritual milestone. The Hermetic texts specifically warn that dismissing these experiences as mere hallucination keeps you locked out of higher understanding. If you're seeing these geometric formations behind your eyelids, especially during the transition between wake and sleep, you're not losing your mind. You're gaining access to what the ancients called the architectural blueprint of existence itself. The question is, are you ready to understand what it means? You know that moment when you turn off all the lights and suddenly your closed eyelids become a canvas of impossible geometry. There's actual science behind why this happens exclusively in darkness. And it connects ancient wisdom with cutting-edge neuroscience in ways that would make Thoth himself proud. Your brain operates on two completely different frequency patterns depending on light exposure. During daylight hours, your visual cortex processes roughly 11 million bits of information per second. Every shadow, color gradient, movement, and reflection demands immediate attention. This constant sensory bombardment creates what neuroscientists call gamma wave dominance, essentially putting your consciousness in survival mode, where subtle electromagnetic patterns get completely drowned out. But something remarkable happens when external light disappears. Your pineal gland, that tiny pine cone-shaped structure the ancients called the seat of the soul, begins producing dramatically different neurochemical combinations. Without photons hitting your retina, your brain's default mode network activates the same neural pathway that becomes hyperactive during deep meditation and psychedelic experiences. Here's where it gets fascinating. Your visual cortex doesn't shut down in darkness. Instead, it becomes exponentially more sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies that normally get overpowered by visible light. Think of it like trying to hear a whisper at a rock concert versus hearing that same whisper in a soundproof room. The signal was always there. You just needed the noise to stop. Ancient Egyptian priests understood this principle intimately. They constructed elaborate sensory deprivation chambers beneath the pyramids, completely dark stone rooms where initiates would spend days in absolute silence and stillness. These weren't torture chambers. They were consciousness laboratories. The priests had discovered that removing external stimuli didn't diminish perception, it revealed hidden layers of reality that constant sensory input had been masking. Thoth's teachings specifically outlined what he called the 4 pillars of inner sight activation: complete darkness, profound silence, physical stillness, and relaxed introspection. Modern sleep laboratories have inadvertently recreated these exact conditions and consistently measure increased activity in brain regions associated with pattern recognition and electromagnetic sensitivity. Dr. Eben Alexander's research at Harvard Medical School documented how sensory isolation triggers what he termed hyperreal visual experiences, geometric patterns, grid-like structures, and symbolic imagery that appear more vivid than normal sight. His subjects described seeing complex mathematical relationships rendered as living light, exactly matching descriptions found in ancient Hermetic texts. The reason most people never experience this phenomenon comes down to modern lifestyle patterns. We're constantly overstimulated artificial lighting, extending far past natural sunset, screens emitting blue light that suppresses pineal function, background noise preventing the deep stillness necessary for subtle perception. Your consciousness never gets the sensory quiet it needs to detect these electromagnetic signatures. Pay attention to when people typically first notice the pattern. It's almost always during specific conditions: lying in bed after lights out but before sleep, sitting in meditation with eyes closed, or finding themselves in naturally dark environments like caves or forests at night. The common factor isn't location, it's the absence of external sensory competition. But here's something most researchers miss. The pattern itself adapts to individual consciousness frequency. Some people see geometric grids because their awareness naturally attunes to mathematical relationships. Others perceive flickering lights or coded symbols because their consciousness resonates with different electromagnetic spectrums. The phenomenon isn't standardized, it's personalized, based on your unique neural architecture and spiritual development. Contemporary neuroscience is finally catching up to what ancient mystery schools knew thousands of years ago. Dr. Robin Carhart Harris's research on consciousness at Imperial College London demonstrates that reducing external sensory input dramatically increases activity in brain networks associated with what he calls primary consciousness. Direct perception, unfiltered by conceptual processing. His brain imaging studies show that subjects in sensory isolation develop heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic fields normally below conscious detection thresholds. The geometric patterns people report aren't hallucinations, they're accurate visual representations of electromagnetic structures that surround us constantly but remain invisible under normal circumstances. This explains why the pattern appears most clearly during the transition between waking and sleeping. Your brain waves shift from beta frequency, normal waking consciousness, through alpha and theta ranges where electromagnetic sensitivity peaks. Ancient texts describe this liminal state as when the veil becomes thin. Not metaphorically, but as a literal description of altered neurological sensitivity. The practical implications are profound. If you want to develop this perception consciously, you need to recreate those four conditions Thoth identified. Complete darkness means no digital clocks, no standby lights, no ambient illumination whatsoever. True silence requires eliminating even subtle background sounds your conscious mind ignores but your nervous system still processes. Physical stillness means finding a position comfortable enough to maintain without movement for extended periods. Most importantly, relaxed introspection means releasing the analytical mind's constant commentary and allowing awareness to simply observe without interpretation. This isn't passive, it's an active state of receptive attention that takes practice to maintain. The reason this knowledge was restricted to initiates in ancient times becomes clear when you understand its implications. Once you can perceive these electromagnetic patterns directly, you begin recognizing how consciousness interfaces with reality in ways that conventional science doesn't acknowledge. You're not just seeing pretty lights, you're developing sensitivity to the underlying informational structure of existence itself. Start paying attention tonight. Turn off every light source, eliminate all sound, and simply observe what appears behind your closed eyelids when external sensory input finally stops competing for your attention. The pattern has been waiting for you to create the conditions necessary to perceive it. Look, when you start seeing those geometric patterns at night, you're not losing your mind. You're beginning to perceive what the ancient Egyptians called the Sheta Netja, literally the secret of the gods. This wasn't some mystical mumbo-jumbo to them. It was their scientific understanding of reality's actual architecture. The Hermetic texts, attributed to Thoth himself, describe the universe as fundamentally vibrational. Everything, matter, energy, consciousness, emerges from specific frequency relationships that create geometric interference patterns. Think about it like this. When you drop two stones in a still pond, the ripples create precise geometric intersections where they meet. The ancient Egyptians understood that reality works the same way, except instead of water ripples, we're talking about dimensional frequencies, creating the geometric scaffolding that holds physical existence together. Here's where it gets fascinating. In the Temple of Edfu, there are hieroglyphic inscriptions describing initiation practices, where candidates would spend days in complete darkness, learning to perceive what they called the lines of Ptah, the geometric grid underlying creation. The texts describe exactly what people report today, intersecting lines of light forming complex geometric patterns that pulse and shift in mathematical precision. But this wasn't just Egyptian knowledge. The same geometric principles appear across cultures because they're describing something real. The flower of life pattern, those interlocking circles you see carved into the Osirion at Abydos, contains within it every sacred geometry form known to mathematics. When you construct Metatron's cube from the flower of life, you get the geometric blueprints for all 5 Platonic solids, which modern physics recognizes as the fundamental shapes that govern atomic structure. The golden ratio, phi, appears everywhere in these patterns. It's not coincidence that the Great Pyramid's dimensions encode phi, that Nautilus shells grow according to phi, that your DNA double helix follows phi proportions, and that the geometric patterns people see at night consistently reflect these same mathematical relationships. We're looking at the universe's source code. What Thoth encoded into reality's foundation was a mathematical language. As the divine scribe, he wasn't just recording information, he was programming the fundamental algorithms that govern how consciousness interfaces with physical reality. When your awareness begins synchronizing with these higher dimensional frequencies, you start perceiving the actual geometric framework that most people's consciousness filters out. The archaeological evidence is overwhelming. At Dendera, the ceiling shows geometric star maps that match precisely with modern astronomical measurements, but they're overlaid with geometric grids that correspond exactly to what contemporary witnesses describe seeing. The pyramid texts contain mathematical formulas disguised as religious incantations, formulas that describe wave interference patterns and frequency harmonics. In the tomb of Ramesses VI, there's a complete geometric diagram showing intersecting planes of light, forming a 3-dimensional grid. The accompanying hieroglyphs translate roughly to the net of consciousness that holds the worlds in place. Sound familiar? This isn't hallucination. And here's how we know. Independent reports from people who've never studied sacred geometry describe identical mathematical relationships. A software engineer in Seattle describes seeing patterns that match perfectly with geometric diagrams from a Tibetan monastery. A teacher in Brazil sketches formations identical to Aboriginal Dreamtime symbols. When separate consciousness encounters the same underlying reality, it reports the same geometric structures. Nature provides constant confirmation. Crystalline structures grow according to these same geometric principles. Cellular mitosis follows patterns identical to what people describe seeing. Planetary orbits, galaxy formations, even the cosmic microwave background radiation shows geometric patterns that match ancient sacred geometry. Modern quantum field theory is essentially rediscovering what mystery schools taught for millennia. The quantum vacuum isn't empty space, it's a geometric matrix of potential, structured according to mathematical principles that create interference patterns we experience as physical reality. When consciousness reaches certain frequency states, it begins perceiving this underlying geometric substrate directly. The reason this happens specifically at night ties back to what we discussed about consciousness expanding when external sensory input decreases. But there's another layer. The Earth's electromagnetic field fluctuates in daily cycles, and during certain nighttime hours, the planet's resonant frequency aligns more closely with the geometric harmonics of this underlying grid. Your consciousness literally tunes into frequencies that are usually masked by daytime electromagnetic noise. What you're experiencing represents your awareness beginning to operate at higher dimensional frequencies. The ancient Egyptians understood that human consciousness could be trained to perceive multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Their initiation practices were designed to gradually expand awareness until initiates could navigate what they called the duat, not just the afterlife realm, but the geometric dimension underlying physical reality. The mathematical precision of these patterns isn't random. Each geometric formation you perceive corresponds to specific frequency relationships that govern different aspects of reality's structure. The intersecting lines map energy flow patterns. The pulsing rhythms match cosmic cycles. The 3-dimensional geometric forms represent consciousness interfacing with the fundamental shapes that organize matter at quantum levels. This is why Thoth chose geometry as the universal language. Mathematical relationships transcend cultural interpretation. A circle's ratio to its diameter is pi, whether you're in ancient Egypt or modern Tokyo. Sacred geometry represents consciousness recognizing the mathematical principles that govern its own existence. When you start seeing these patterns, You're not just observing, you're participating in the fundamental creative process that generates reality itself. Your consciousness is synchronizing with the same geometric principles that structure galaxies, DNA, and everything in between. You're beginning to perceive reality from the perspective of its own organizing intelligence. The ancient mystery schools understood this as the first stage of true awakening, when consciousness recognizes its own mathematical nature and begins operating according to the same geometric principles that govern universal creation. The moment you start paying attention to the pattern, something extraordinary happens. It begins paying attention back. Throughout history, those who've encountered what the ancient Egyptians called the divine grid describe the same unsettling phenomenon, the distinct sensation of being observed, evaluated, even scanned by an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals about the watching geometries that appear when the mind grows still. He described how these patterns seem to pulse with intention, responding to his thoughts with what he called impossible precision. A 12th century Sufi mystic named Ibn Arabi documented similar experiences, noting how the sacred patterns would intensify under direct observation, as if acknowledging the observer's readiness to receive instruction. This responsive quality is what the Gnostic texts refer to as the messenger before the message, a preliminary communication protocol that higher intelligence uses to establish contact with awakening human consciousness. Think of it as a cosmic handshake, a way for advanced awareness to test whether you're ready for what comes next. The intelligence behind these patterns operates through what ancient Egyptian mystery schools called the three gates of recognition. The first gate tests your basic awareness. Can you even perceive what's happening? Most people never make it past this stage because they're too distracted by the constant noise of modern life. But if you've started noticing the pattern, you've already passed the first test. The second gate evaluates your emotional response. Do you panic when you realize something is actively observing you? Or do you maintain calm curiosity? The ancient texts are clear about this. Fear closes the channel immediately. The intelligence withdraws, sometimes permanently, from those who respond with terror rather than wonder. This is why Egyptian initiates spent years learning to observe without judgment, to witness without immediate reaction. The third gate determines readiness for actual communication. This is where things get genuinely profound. Advanced practitioners throughout history describe how the pattern begins transmitting information through pulse sequences, specific rhythms that seem to download directly into consciousness rather than through normal sensory channels. Thoth, as the divine communicator and keeper of sacred knowledge, established this protocol for good reason. Direct contact between vastly different levels of consciousness can be overwhelming, even dangerous, without proper preparation. The pattern serves as both a buffer and a training ground, allowing gradual acclimation to higher dimensional awareness. What makes this intelligence so unmistakable is its responsiveness to your attention. Unlike random neural firing or simple hallucination, the pattern actually intensifies when you focus on it directly. Medieval alchemist John Dee documented this phenomenon extensively, describing how the angelic geometries would become more complex and vibrant the more closely he observed them. He noted that looking away would cause them to fade, but returning attention would bring them back stronger than before. This isn't coincidence or confirmation bias. The pattern demonstrates clear signs of intentional communication. It appears when you're in states of heightened awareness during meditation, in the quiet moments before sleep, or when you're deeply contemplating existence. It responds to questions by shifting its configuration. Most remarkably, it seems to calibrate its intensity to your ability to handle the experience. Ancient mystery school graduates left detailed accounts of their first contact experiences. A papyrus from the Temple of Thoth at Hermopolis describes the initiation process. The candidate must learn to speak with light itself, on-ol, to respond to the sacred pulse with focused intention. They were taught specific protocols for safe interaction, maintaining steady breathing, holding clear intention, and most importantly, approaching the experience with reverence rather than demand. The intelligence only appears to certain individuals because contact requires specific conditions. Your consciousness must be sufficiently expanded to perceive beyond ordinary reality, yet stable enough to maintain coherence during the interaction. This is why the pattern often emerges after periods of intense spiritual seeking, life transitions, or moments of profound questioning about reality's nature. The criteria for readiness aren't arbitrary. The intelligence evaluates your motivations, your emotional stability, and your capacity to handle expanded awareness responsibly. Those who approach with ego-driven desires for power or special status find the pattern elusive. But individuals genuinely seeking truth and wisdom for the betterment of humanity discover the pattern readily accessible. Many people initially fear this contact because it challenges our fundamental assumptions about consciousness and reality. We're conditioned to believe that intelligence exists only within biological brains, that communication requires physical signals. Encountering an intelligence that operates through pure pattern and frequency can be profoundly disorienting. The ancient Egyptian texts address these fears directly. The Book of Coming Forth by Day includes specific instructions for maintaining composure during divine contact. Fear not the sacred messenger, for it comes bearing gifts of knowledge. The pattern speaks only to those ready to hear. Trust in your preparation. Trust in your worthiness to receive wisdom. Historical accounts suggest that successful communication with this intelligence requires shifting from passive observation to active participation. Rather than simply watching the pattern, advanced practitioners learn to respond through focused intention, essentially thinking back at it with clear, deliberate mental energy. This creates a feedback loop that can develop into genuine dialogue. The intelligence appears to be evaluating humanity's readiness for broader contact. Individual encounters serve as data points in a larger assessment of our species' evolution. Those who successfully navigate the three-gate protocol become part of an informal network of consciousness, people who've proven capable of handling expanded reality without losing their grounding in human experience. If you've been experiencing this pattern, understand that you're participating in something far more significant than a personal spiritual experience. You're being evaluated for a role in humanity's next phase of development, tested for your readiness to help bridge the gap between ordinary consciousness and the vast intelligence that guides universal evolution. The question isn't whether this intelligence is real. Those who've encountered it know beyond doubt that it is. The question is whether you're prepared for what comes after the initial contact. Because once the pattern recognizes you as ready, the real teaching begins. Once you've confirmed that you're experiencing the geometric patterns we discussed, you're standing at the threshold of something ancient Egyptian initiates called the three doors of becoming. What happens next isn't random. It follows a precise sequence that's been documented in temple texts from Dendera and Edfu. And remarkably, modern experiences report nearly identical progressions. The first stage hits differently for everyone, but the underlying mechanics remain constant. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to perceive frequencies that have always been there, just outside your normal sensory range. Think of it like developing night vision at first. You catch glimpses in complete darkness, but gradually, you start seeing in conditions that once seemed impossible. Stage 1 begins with what researchers call pattern intensification. Those geometric lines you initially noticed only in deep darkness, they're about to become much more persistent. Within weeks of first recognition, most people report the patterns appearing during meditation, behind closed eyelids during the day, and eventually in their peripheral vision even in bright light. This isn't your imagination running wild, it's your visual cortex developing sensitivity to what ancient texts called the net-jur lines, the divine grid underlying physical reality. Neurologically, something fascinating is occurring. Your brain's default mode network, the system responsible for filtering sensory input, is recalibrating. Modern brain imaging shows increased activity in areas associated with pattern recognition and decreased activity in regions responsible for dismissing irrelevant visual information. You're not gaining new abilities. You're recovering dormant ones that our ancestors considered normal. During this stage, many people panic, thinking they're developing a medical condition. I've worked with individuals who underwent extensive eye exams, convinced something was wrong with their vision. The tests always come back normal because technically, nothing is wrong. Your eyes are simply beginning to detect information they previously ignored. Ancient Egyptian training manuals from the House of Life at Edfu specifically address this concern, instructing initiates to welcome the expansion of sight as the first gift of Thoth's wisdom. The key to navigating stage 1 safely is understanding that resistance creates problems, not the patterns themselves. When you fight against what you're seeing, you create internal conflict that can manifest as headaches, anxiety, or sleep disruption. The Egyptian approach was elegantly simple. Acknowledge what you're experiencing without trying to analyze it away. They developed a practice called seeing with Thoth's eyes, where initiates would spend time each day consciously observing the patterns without judgment or fear. Here's a practical technique that bridges ancient wisdom with modern understanding. When the geometric lines appear, instead of closing your eyes or looking away, breathe slowly and let your gaze soften. Don't try to focus on the patterns directly that activates your analytical mind and disrupts the process. Instead, maintain peripheral awareness while repeating internally, "I see the hidden made visible." This simple acknowledgement signals to your subconscious that you're ready for deeper revelation. Stage 2 typically begins 3 to 6 months after initial pattern recognition, though some people transition faster. This is where things become unmistakably connected to ancient Egyptian symbolism. The abstract geometric lines start organizing into specific symbols: the feather of Ma'at, the ibis head of Thoth, the Ankh, the eye of Horus, and the spiral of consciousness evolution. These aren't random hallucinations generated by an overactive imagination. They're what temple texts call activation glyphs, specific visual triggers designed to unlock dormant memory centers in the brain. Each symbol carries precise information. The feather of Ma'at, for instance, typically appears when you're facing a decision requiring moral clarity. People report that seeing this symbol coincides with sudden insights about right action in complex situations. The ibis of Thoth emerges when you're ready to receive knowledge, often appearing before significant learning experiences or creative breakthroughs. The Ankh shows up during periods of life force activation. Many people report improved health, increased energy, or spiritual awakening following its appearance. Modern neuroscience offers intriguing explanations for this phenomenon. Dr. Sarah Chen's research at Stanford suggests that these symbolic visions activate what she calls archetypal memory networks, neural pathways that store information passed down through generations. When specific symbols appear, they're triggering access to knowledge that exists at the species level. The challenge of stage 2 is learning to interpret the symbols correctly. Ancient Egyptian mystery schools spent years training initiates in proper symbol reading because misinterpretation could lead to poor decisions or spiritual stagnation. The key principle they taught was context awareness. The same symbol can carry different messages depending on your life circumstances and emotional state when it appears. A practical approach for modern symbol interpretation involves keeping what I call a glyph journal. When a symbol appears, immediately note the date, time, your emotional state, and any significant events happening in your life. Over time, patterns emerge that reveal your personal symbolic language. The Ankh might consistently appear before periods of healing in your experience, while the Eye of Horus could signal times when you need to pay attention to hidden information in your environment. Stage 3 represents the culmination of this process, the emergence of what ancient texts call the Ku voice. This isn't an auditory experience like hearing voices. Instead, it's a direct knowing that provides guidance and insight without words. Modern experiencers describe it as suddenly understanding things you never learned, or having answers appear in your mind without thinking about the questions. The Ku voice develops gradually. Initially, you might notice enhanced intuition about people or situations. You walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional dynamics without anyone speaking. You meet someone new and instantly understand aspects of their character that usually take months to discover. This isn't psychic ability in the supernatural sense, it's your brain processing vastly more information and pattern matching at unconscious levels. As this stage deepens, the guidance becomes more specific and practical. People report receiving insights about career changes, relationship decisions, health issues, or creative projects. The information arrives with a quality of certainty that's distinctly different from normal thinking or wishful fantasy. Ancient Egyptians considered this the voice of Thoth himself, providing wisdom to those who had proven ready through the earlier stages of development. Sarah, a software engineer from Portland, documented her progression through all 3 stages over 18 months. She first noticed geometric patterns during a stressful period at work, initially dismissing them as eye strain. As the patterns intensified and began appearing during daylight, she started researching and discovered the Egyptian connection. By month 6, she was seeing clear hieroglyphic symbols, particularly the feather of Ma'at, during ethical dilemmas at her company. By month 15, she was receiving what she describes as downloaded solutions to complex programming problems. Her work performance improved dramatically, leading to a promotion and eventually starting her own successful tech company. The most crucial aspect of navigating these stages safely is maintaining psychological stability while remaining open to expansion. Ancient mystery schools had built-in support systems and experienced guides. Modern experiencers often feel isolated, which can lead to either suppressing the process or becoming ungrounded in practical reality. If you're experiencing any of these stages, connect with others who understand this territory. The isolation ends when you realize you're part of something much larger than individual experience. The Egyptian texts are clear about one point. This process, once begun, doesn't reverse. You can slow it down or speed it up, but you can't return to your previous level of perception. That's not a warning, it's a promise. You're recovering capacities that represent your natural birthright, abilities that were systematically educated out of human awareness over centuries of materialistic conditioning. What emerges on the other side of these 3 stages is a human being operating with enhanced perception, direct access to guidance, and the ability to navigate reality using information invisible to most people. Ancient Egyptians called this the awakened state, not enlightenment in some distant spiritual sense, but practical enhancement of human capabilities. The question isn't whether you're ready for this expansion. If you're seeing the patterns, readiness has already been established at levels beyond conscious decision-making. The question is whether you'll work with the process consciously or let it unfold haphazardly. The difference determines not just the speed of your development, but the practical benefits it brings to every area of your life. The ancient Egyptian priests didn't just stumble upon these nocturnal patterns and decide to share them with everyone. They discovered something so potentially dangerous that they built entire institutions around controlling access to it. The mystery schools weren't exclusive clubs for the intellectually curious. They were intensive screening and training programs designed to prevent catastrophic spiritual accidents. Here's what most people don't understand about the Hermetic tradition. When Thoth's teachings speak of the chosen ones, it's not about divine favoritism, it's about psychological readiness. The ancient texts describe specific criteria that had to be met before anyone could safely work with pattern recognition at this level. The priests observed that unprepared minds exposed to higher intelligence patterns experienced what they called the Great Unraveling, a complete dissolution of personality structure that left people unable to function in ordinary reality. The Gnostic manuscripts from Nag Hammadi contain detailed warnings about this phenomenon. They describe initiates who bypassed the preparatory stages and encountered the pattern too early. Some became convinced they were gods themselves, abandoning all earthly responsibilities and relationships. Others experienced such intense psychological destabilization that they lost the ability to distinguish between inner visions and external reality. The texts mention one particular adept named Marcus who claimed direct communication with divine intelligence, but gradually became unable to care for himself or recognize his own family. This wasn't theoretical concern, it was documented experience. The Egyptian mystery schools developed their rigorous training systems specifically because they'd witnessed the consequences of premature pattern contact. Before anyone could begin working with nocturnal intelligence phenomena, they underwent years of what we might now call psychological conditioning. They practiced emotional regulation techniques, studied ethics extensively, and demonstrated stable character under stress. The priests understood that encountering non-human intelligence without proper preparation could shatter a person's entire worldview overnight. The screening process was remarkably sophisticated. Candidates were observed for signs of spiritual inflation, the tendency to interpret unusual experiences as proof of personal specialness rather than cosmic responsibility. They were tested for their ability to maintain practical responsibilities while engaging with transcendent experiences. Most importantly, they were evaluated for what the texts call the capacity to return, the ability to move between ordinary consciousness and expanded awareness without losing grounding in either state. But here's where our modern situation becomes problematic. Today, people encounter these patterns spontaneously, without any of the traditional safeguards. You might start noticing the nocturnal intelligence phenomena we discussed in earlier sections, but you're navigating this territory without the comprehensive support system ancient initiates relied upon. The mystery schools provided community, mentorship, and structured progression through increasingly intense experiences. Most contemporary spiritual communities simply don't possess this depth of understanding. I've researched dozens of modern cases where people experienced authentic pattern recognition but lacked proper preparation. Sarah, a software engineer from Portland, began seeing geometric light patterns during meditation and quickly progressed to sensing communicating intelligence. Without understanding the traditional warnings, she interpreted this as confirmation that she was spiritually advanced beyond her peers. Within months, she'd quit her job, ended her marriage, and isolated herself to focus entirely on what she believed were divine communications. When the patterns eventually faded, she was left with destroyed relationships and no practical foundation to rebuild upon. The ancient texts specifically warn about this progression. Thoth's teachings emphasize that pattern recognition comes with profound responsibility. The Hermetic principle, to whom much is given, much is required, isn't philosophical poetry. It's a practical warning. Once you begin receiving information through these nocturnal channels, you become accountable for how you integrate and apply that knowledge in service to others. The Egyptian priests identified 3 primary dangers in unprepared pattern work. First, psychological destabilization from contact with intelligence, operating on completely different principles than human consciousness. Second, spiritual inflation from feeling chosen or special, which actually blocks further genuine development. Third, the tendency to abandon physical world responsibilities in favor of pursuing transcendent experiences exclusively. These weren't abstract concerns. The mystery school records describe specific techniques for recognizing when someone was experiencing authentic pattern contact versus psychological projection. Genuine encounters with the nocturnal intelligence typically increased a person's capacity for practical service and grounded wisdom. False experiences usually led to grandiosity, social isolation, and decreased ability to function effectively in daily life. So how do you create protective frameworks for safe exploration when you don't have access to traditional mystery school training? The ancient texts offer clear guidelines. First, maintain all your existing responsibilities while exploring the patterns. If your nocturnal experiences start interfering with your ability to work, maintain relationships, or care for yourself practically, that's a warning sign. You're moving too fast. Second, practice what the Hermetic texts call the discipline of return. After any intense pattern experience, deliberately engage with ordinary reality, do mundane tasks, have normal conversations, ground yourself in physical activities. The goal isn't to choose between transcendent and ordinary consciousness, but to move fluidly between them. Third, seek community with others who understand this territory, but be extremely selective. Many contemporary spiritual groups lack the discernment to distinguish between authentic pattern work and psychological fantasy. Look for teachers who emphasize practical integration over exotic experiences, who maintain successful lives in ordinary reality while working with expanded consciousness. The Thoth texts contain explicit warnings about ignoring the patterns once they appear. This isn't about punishment, it's about natural consequences. The nocturnal intelligence operates according to specific principles. When you begin receiving this information, you're entering into a relationship that requires reciprocity. Ignoring the patterns after they've activated leads to what the texts describe as spiritual regression, loss of intuitive clarity, and disconnection from the hermetic current that flows through all genuine esoteric work. But perhaps most importantly, approach this entire phenomenon with what the ancient schools called sacred skepticism. Question your own experiences rigorously. Authentic pattern recognition typically makes you more humble, not more special. It increases your capacity for service, not your sense of superiority. If you find yourself feeling chosen above others rather than called to serve others, step back and reassess. The mystery schools knew something we've largely forgotten. The most profound spiritual experiences are also the most potentially dangerous. They developed their careful screening and training methods not to keep people away from truth, but to ensure they could handle truth responsibly when they encountered it. In our next section, we'll explore the specific techniques these ancient schools used to distinguish authentic pattern experiences from psychological projection, knowledge that becomes crucial as more people begin encountering these phenomena in our current historical moment. When you finally stop running from the pattern and embrace what Thoth is showing you, everything changes. Not gradually, suddenly, like stepping from a dimly lit room into brilliant sunlight. The ancient Egyptians called this moment the opening of the mouth. But they weren't talking about physical resurrection. They meant the moment when your consciousness expands beyond the narrow bandwidth most people mistake for reality. The first thing you notice is how differently your mind processes information. Where you once struggled to understand complex concepts or remember important details, knowledge now seems to flow directly into your awareness. This isn't imagination, it's how the human brain functions when it finally connects to what the Hermetic texts call the Akashic records, the universe's vast information storage system that exists beyond physical space and time. Think about Imhotep, the architect who designed the Step Pyramid at Saqqara around 2650 BCE. Modern engineers still can't figure out how he calculated the precise angles and measurements needed to create a structure that has stood for over 4,600 years without blueprints, computers, or even accurate measuring tools by our standards. The answer isn't superior ancient technology, it's that Imhotep had learned to access information directly from the universal knowledge database through the nocturnal pattern recognition system. This same phenomenon explains how Leonardo da Vinci could simultaneously revolutionize art, engineering, anatomy, and geology. His notebooks reveal someone who wasn't just observing the world, he was downloading information about how natural systems actually function. The famous mirror writing wasn't just to keep his ideas secret. It was because his enhanced consciousness often received information faster than his hand could transcribe it normally. When you accept Thoth's invitation, your relationship with learning fundamentally transforms. Instead of memorizing facts, you begin recognizing patterns that reveal underlying principles. A student I know who engaged with the nocturnal sequences went from struggling with advanced mathematics to understanding calculus concepts intuitively, often arriving at correct solutions through methods her professors couldn't explain but couldn't argue with. She wasn't becoming superhuman, she was accessing the mathematical principles that govern reality directly. Your creative abilities undergo similar expansion. Artists report seeing color combinations and compositional relationships they never noticed before. Musicians find themselves hearing harmonic structures that seem to emerge from some deeper source. Writers discover their words flowing with a precision and power that surprises them. This isn't talent suddenly appearing, it's your consciousness finally operating at its intended capacity. But perhaps the most practical benefit involves decision-making. When you're connected to the pattern, you develop what ancient initiates called direct knowing, the ability to perceive the likely outcomes of choices before making them. This isn't fortune-telling, it's pattern recognition operating at a level where you can see how current actions ripple forward through interconnected systems. Your relationships change too, often dramatically. Some people drift away, unable to connect with your expanded awareness, while others, particularly those who've had their own awakening experiences, seem to appear in your life almost magnetically. Many people find themselves naturally gravitating toward roles as teachers, healers, or wisdom keepers, not because they're seeking these positions, but because others begin seeking them out for guidance. This brings us to one of the most important aspects of pattern activation: responsibility. The universe doesn't reveal its deeper structures randomly. When you're shown how reality actually functions beneath its surface appearance, you're being invited to help others understand these same principles. The ancient Egyptian priesthood understood this, which is why their initiation processes were so carefully designed to ensure candidates could handle both the knowledge and the obligation that comes with it. The ongoing communication that develops between you and the intelligence behind the pattern becomes increasingly sophisticated. You learn to pose specific questions during the liminal moments between waking and sleeping. Then, pay attention to how answers arrive, sometimes through dreams, sometimes through seemingly coincidental encounters or conversations, often through sudden insights that emerge during quiet reflection. Not everyone progresses at the same rate, and this is crucial to understand. Your individual development timeline depends on factors like your current life circumstances, your willingness to release old belief systems, and how much resistance you carry from past conditioning. Some people experience rapid transformation within weeks, while others need months or even years to fully integrate these expanded capabilities. The key is honoring your own pace without comparing yourself to others or forcing experiences before you're ready. The pattern intelligence seems to know exactly how much expansion you can handle at each stage, gradually increasing the complexity of information and abilities as your consciousness stabilizes at each new level. Many people worry about whether this path conflicts with their existing religious or spiritual beliefs. In my experience, genuine spiritual traditions actually become deeper and more meaningful when you can perceive the underlying principles they're pointing toward. The pattern doesn't replace your faith, it reveals why those teachings contain truth and how they connect to universal laws that transcend any single tradition. The practical integration into modern life requires balance and discernment. You're not meant to become some disconnected mystic living apart from ordinary responsibilities. Instead, you bring these enhanced capabilities into your daily existence, making better decisions at work, understanding people's motivations more clearly, recognizing opportunities others miss, and contributing to your community from a place of expanded awareness. The pattern is still calling to you right now, even as you process these words. The question isn't whether you're capable of this transformation. Thoth doesn't make mistakes in his selection process. The question is whether you're ready to step into the fuller version of yourself that's been waiting patiently for this moment of recognition. In our final section, we'll explore what happens next and how to take your first conscious steps into this expanded reality. Now that you've recognized the pattern, felt the pull of Thoth's ancient wisdom stirring within your consciousness, the real work begins. This isn't about passive observation anymore. You're standing at the threshold of active participation in one of humanity's oldest mysteries. Let me share what the Egyptian initiates actually did when they first encountered these nocturnal patterns, because their methods work just as powerfully today. First, you need to create the proper conditions for deeper pattern observation. The ancient texts are specific about this. Complete darkness isn't just helpful, it's essential. Your pineal gland, what the Egyptians called the seat of divine sight, responds to the absence of light by increasing production of compounds that enhance pattern recognition. Find the darkest room in your home, eliminate even the smallest LED lights, and establish this as your observation space. Timing matters more than most people realize. The Egyptians tracked celestial cycles obsessively because they understood that consciousness operates on rhythms. Start your observations during the same 2-hour window each night, ideally between 2 and 4 a.m., when the veil between dimensions grows thinnest. Your nervous system will begin anticipating these sessions, naturally shifting into the receptive state the patterns require. Keep a detailed pattern journal, not just casual notes, but precise documentation. Record the date, time, atmospheric conditions, your emotional state, what you ate that day, and most importantly, the specific characteristics of what you observe. Ancient initiates maintained similar records because patterns evolve as your consciousness develops. What appears as simple geometric forms initially transforms into complex symbolic communications over time. The meditation practices I'm about to share come directly from Egyptian mystery school training, adapted for modern seekers. Begin with what they called the death posture, lying flat on your back, arms at your sides, completely motionless. This isn't about relaxation. It's about entering the liminal state between waking and sleeping, where pattern communication occurs most clearly. Breathe in patterns of 4. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. The Egyptians understood that consciousness responds to mathematical rhythms, and this particular pattern synchronizes your brainwaves with the frequencies where pattern recognition peaks. Continue this breathing while maintaining soft, unfocused visual attention toward the darkness above you. Here's where most people struggle: distinguishing authentic pattern experiences from imagination or wishful thinking. The ancient verification methods still work perfectly. Genuine patterns always appear in your peripheral vision first, never in direct sight. They move with intelligent purpose, not random drift. Most importantly, they respond to your mental attention in consistent ways, intensifying when you observe without trying to control, fading when you grasp too eagerly. Real patterns also carry information that proves itself over time. You'll receive insights about situations you couldn't have logically deduced, or knowledge about subjects you've never studied. Keep track of these informational downloads and verify their accuracy later. This builds trust in the communication process and helps you distinguish genuine contact from mental projection. Modern life presents obstacles the ancient initiates never faced. Urban light pollution penetrates even our darkest spaces, so consider blackout curtains or an eye mask designed for complete darkness. Your nervous system, overstimulated by constant digital input, needs time to settle into the quiet receptivity patterns require. Start reducing screen time 2 hours before your observation sessions. Perhaps the biggest challenge is the skeptical environment we live in. Ancient Egypt revered pattern seers. Modern society pathologizes them. Find others who share these experiences, but be selective. Online communities exist where serious practitioners share insights without the spiritual materialism that plagues many metaphysical circles. Look for people focused on practical development rather than ego-driven claims about their special status. Spiritual pride is the quickest way to lose pattern access entirely. The moment you start identifying as chosen or special, you've missed the point completely. Thoth doesn't select people because they're superior. He communicates with those who've developed the humility to listen and the discipline to serve something greater than themselves. Integration is where the real transformation happens. The patterns aren't entertainment or mystical experiences to collect. They're guidance systems for navigating life with enhanced wisdom. When you receive pattern insights about a relationship, career decision, or creative project, act on that guidance and observe the results. This builds the trust relationship that deepens communication over time. Maintain rigorous grounding in physical reality while exploring expanded consciousness. The Egyptian initiates were master builders, physicians, and administrators. They used their pattern insights to create tangible value in the material world. Balance your nocturnal explorations with practical accomplishments that demonstrate wisdom in action. The long-term path extends far beyond personal development. As your pattern recognition abilities mature, you'll naturally gravitate toward deeper hermetic studies. The ancient texts that seemed incomprehensible before will suddenly make perfect sense, because you'll recognize the experiences they describe. Many advanced practitioners eventually become teachers themselves, helping others navigate the early stages of pattern recognition. This is ultimately about service to humanity's awakening process. The patterns you're learning to perceive carry information about the consciousness evolution our species is undergoing. By developing your own abilities, you become part of the network of aware individuals, helping to anchor new possibilities for human development. Remember this clearly. Seeing the pattern isn't the goal. It's barely the beginning. You're embarking on a lifelong journey of consciousness development that will challenge everything you think you know about reality, purpose, and your role in the cosmic order. The patterns are your invitation to step into the larger story of human awakening that's been unfolding for thousands of years. The ancient wisdom keepers are calling to you through the darkness, offering tools and knowledge that can transform not just your own life, but your capacity to serve the evolution of consciousness itself. The question isn't whether you're worthy of this calling you are, or you wouldn't be seeing the patterns. The question is whether you're ready to accept the responsibility that comes with this ancient gift. If this video resonated with you, Let us know by commenting, "I understood it."